Good day, guys. Welcome to another episode of Future Talk. My name is Sophia Dube, and today we're in beautiful Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, and we were attending a youth leadership forum, which was done by Mantate Mlotshwa, the beautiful Mantate Mlotshwa, and we were there to talk about the problems affecting the city of Bulawayo and how we can eradicate those problems and what is the way forward as the youths and how we can help each other grow and become the better citizens of Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. And please enjoy the episode.
That's just that. Everything else becomes secondary. Why a young person from Bulawayo? Because our city has so much potential. How I hate saying that. It has so much potential to be the leader of innovation in the country, based on so many other things that young people don't really look at and see, or rather, not just young people, but particularly the conversation that I know Mantate hates, the political conversation in terms of how our leaders have failed to identify what we have, especially as Bulawayo. Now, let me start probably by giving a bit of background that I understand. And lest I confuse, I'm speaking about business and entrepreneurship and how we can create a sustainable environment for the young people of Bulawayo to lead innovation in Zimbabwe going forward and not just be the other city. So let me start by challenging Terry. Terry, I have the mic, so I can lead this one. Terry has been doing a lot of cleaning up with other colleagues in the country, or rather in the city, in terms of how can we make the city clean. And I want to challenge Terry and say, Terry, what if your message was not keep Bulawayo clean, but it was, I'm from Bulawayo, we don't litter? That becomes a personal message to somebody, because if I just say, yeah, keep Bulawayo clean, I mean, that's been said for decades and decades, and yet you still see people on the street either dumping pampers or dumping their papers. But when you say, we are from Bulawayo, we don't litter, it becomes a personal message that even when I go, whenever I'm in Harare and I see someone littering, I tell them, pick up your paper. And they say, why? I told them, I'm from Bulawayo, we don't litter. It becomes a sense of pride. So if you adopt that, that's framing your business in such a way that it becomes attractive to the next person. Now, why am I talking about Terry? Because Terry is into the NGO space. I'm basically saying that business is not just restricted to what we know as traditional business, making money, buying and selling, as it were. But each and everything that we do is a business, one way or the other. So we got independence in the 1980s, and the business environment that we've had for a very long time in the country is mostly, especially as Bulawayo, let me try and zero it down. We've been focusing mostly on industry, producing this and producing that, based on the agriculture that is around the country, and also particularly in Matabeleland. So our CSEs were looking at issues to do with cattle, and that was supplying butter that we feel proudly is a Zimbabwean company, but it's not, it's actually French. And so many of the other companies that were operating in Zimbabwe. But over time and over the years, most of these industries have sort of relocated to Harare, and most of the production has been taking place there. And what that means for the young person in Bulawayo is that they've been left vulnerable in a way, in the sense that they can, if they are not, which is also a principle that I hate, if they are not woke or schooled enough to be in an office job somewhere, they fail to access job in an industry, because our industries have been shutting down for a very long time. And so they resort to what they are working on, the NGO people, in terms of addressing drug and substance abuse and all the other issues that we have in the city. And also, not only that, we have an issue of financial literacy that needs to be taught to young people. May I please see a show of hands, anybody who knows the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange? That's 2 out of, I guess, over 30 people here, which is something that is very interesting, because the current richest man in the world is an investor in the stock exchange. So that on its own shows that there are so many avenues in which we can access wealth. Oh yeah, and that man is Warren Buffett. We can access so many avenues of wealth in the country or even beyond, but because we have no access and we don't know, because our biggest challenge in this day and age is the fact that we don't know, and young people mostly don't read. That has been the biggest challenge. And also in terms of background, in terms of business in Bulawayo, the leadership that we have, man, I always come back to leadership. The leadership that we have has failed to understand how business works and how innovation works going forward. I know for a fact that Bulawayo has what they call shells for business and entrepreneurship at Kelvin, and these are run by City Council of Bulawayo. But when you go there now, you will find older people that are not even students. Those were designed for young people in Bulawayo to utilize. But busy bayenza amaplanka konale, and it's older people, an older generation of people, because young people are not utilizing that space, and some of these programs are not fully utilized and advertised in the city. So those are some of the issues that we get around the city. And also, one other note in terms of the background of business and entrepreneurship in Bulawayo is that we have a belief, it's an innate belief that all things Harare are good things, and all things Bulawayo are just art. If you talk about art in the country, you talk about Bulawayo, but we don't talk about art as a business. We talk about art as culture, heritage, and whatnot. But Bulawayo as a cultural hub in the country needs to move towards monetizing art, needs to move towards ensuring that our art is not just what they sing about, what they talk about, but when it's time to call for big gigs, like towards the end of the year like this, Bulawayo is flooded with either Harare, Maswingo, or Gweru artists. And yet we do have Bulawayo artists that are not necessarily being equipped to expose themselves. So what do we do now? I think that is the biggest question that we probably brought us into this room. First of all, there is a need for financial literacy whether it's in school or especially in the city. We are trying as much as possible through the work that I do to ensure that, especially for girls, that's where me and Mantate probably get along, that adolescent girls and young women get financial literacy, technology and knowledge so that they can be able to start their businesses, or so that they can be able to get into the employment sector if they can. Because the challenge has always been, yeah, of course, the guys can hustle, but the young ladies often become challenged in the sense that in our communities, and especially Maupuma Ekas, you would know the experience of adolescent girls and young women in the city. It's dire and it's very serious. And the second thing that we need to do as well as a city is we need to brand ourselves. We need to create a brand Bulawayo that goes beyond just a brand Zimbabwe. Because, I mean, let me take a crazy example. Mnangagwa has worn that scarf of his since the day of his inauguration, and it has become a symbol for whatever reason, whether good or bad. Why can we not have an identity of business and entrepreneurship as Bulawayo, considering that we have the best infrastructure in the country, really? Because, yeah, I mean, I've traveled cities in Zimbabwe, their infrastructure is horrible. Even their roads will take you round and round in one place. But we have the infrastructure that can drive us forward should we choose to utilize it. And of course, the other thing that we need to utilize, oh my word, the 5 minutes is up, and I'm just getting started.
Don't worry, you'll get a chance to, when I start asking you questions. It's okay, I actually gave you more time than 5 minutes. But not to stop you, I'll give you space to close what you're about to say, but then I'll be asking you questions so you'll get a chance to expand on some of the things that you're raising. So if you can close for me that sentence.
Oh, wow, that sentence. In order for us to lead innovation as Bulawayo, we need to define ourselves and lead change and not necessarily wait for the capital city to determine our future.
Okay, thank you so much. The one thing I think I forgot to do was to tell you what each speaker is going to talk about. Unhlanhla clarified ukuthi he was talking about business and entrepreneurship, right? And then Ukhosi is talking about, which name do you use the most? Okay. He's got another name, so I don't know what's he, but anyway, he's going to talk about media and the creative arts. And then Uteri is talking about civil society and philanthropic work. And then Nash is talking about young people and politics. And then just before I jump it back to this, guys, I think it was very important for me to have said earlier, Uti, the idea behind this space, this discussion today was to say, as young people go Bulawayo, what has been our experience of the year 2019? Mina ngingakhangela owami 2019, I mean, it's them, it's been them, auntie. But I feel like we've got different experiences, but they're similar in a way. And that's what I want to talk about. In the business and entrepreneurship sector, where young people are hustling, how has it been for them? In the media and creative arts sector, where young people are hustling as well, they're trying to make it work. Like what I was saying about how Bula is the hub of the arts in Zim, auntie. How are they managing? How are they monetizing the arts? How are they trying to break through into these opportunities that seem to be centralized to Harare or that don't exist at all? Uteri is coming in to talk about civil society because, I mean, we've got NGOs everywhere. We've got everyone doing charity because there's a gap. Someone is doing the charity work, someone is cleaning the city because it's not being cleaned, or abantu they're littering, or someone is not doing stuff for children that's supposed to be doing it. And then Unachi is coming in to talk about politics because Zim is, our everyday life is politics. And I think young people have a voice in politics, and there are certain gaps that are there. We are divided as young people for some reasons, and I feel like we need to talk about conversations, or we need to have conversations where we talk about politics and young people and how it relates to all of those sectors. So what they're giving in the 5 minutes is not just an introduction, you're not just introducing yourself, but you're also sort of like giving us, what's been the experience of young people in the space, in the sector? You talked about business. There are young people that are hustling, plastic, you know? Those are young people hustling. Busy trying to, you know, the media, printer guys, and that's the hustle that we're seeing in the city. That's becoming the space for young people where we're trying to get the money. Ukhosi coming in to talk about the arts as well. What's been the experience of young people in the arts and media sector in the year 2019? If we're able to look back at the year with the challenges and strengths, we're able to then craft a vision that looks into 2020.
I work for the National Gallery of Zimbabwe here in Bulawayo, where I am the regional director, effective May 2019. Before that, I was working for Amagugu International Heritage Center. It's a cultural space in the Matopos, where we facilitate preservation and promotion of indigenous cultural heritage, you know, so that as we evolve into the future, we have a solid base in terms of reflecting, in terms of where we are coming from as a people. What is it that informs our worldview? That is the story, that is the narrative that we propagate. But now I'm in a predominantly visual arts space whose mandate is to facilitate the development of visual artists and art in particular in 5 distinct provinces: Bulawayo, North, Mat South, Midlands, and Maswingo. And you know, bringing the conversation back to Bulawayo, I will talk about the positioning of arts, culture, and heritage in terms of the growth of the city of Bulawayo, in particular, the fortunes of the arts in general in 2019, and what ought to be done so that we facilitate concerted growth of the arts space in Zimbabwe, which I may start by mentioning that generally and traditionally the arts have been peripheral in terms of the national development agenda. Recently, we had a conversation with the President of the Republic at the Rainbow Hotel, and they were honest to say we were hesitant to come and conversate with the art space because we're thinking with you know, those traditional stereotypes, negative perceptions towards the arts. Even at a domestic level, our parents hardly do they encourage their children to pursue the arts. So that is the context generally of the arts at a national level and at a domestic level. But all the same, the arts traditionally in Bulawayo have proved to be a source of occupation and a source of income. I make that distinction because there are some who are doing it as a pastime occupation, and then there are those who are pursuing it as a source of income. So we have those two distinct groups, and Bulawayo in Zimbabwe holds the reputation of being the cultural capital. At a later stage, I will interrogate that perception as well, which in my opinion is overstretched really. The reality in that game needs to be tested. But all the same, the population dynamics are that in Zimbabwe, at least below 25, 65% of the population are below 25. And many young people are employed in the art space in Bulawayo, predominantly dance groups. There are a lot of them in this city. Post-2000, with a lot of dance groups blooming out of the city, or EASA and many others. Others have folded, others are still going strong. But Bulawayo has always had that reputation. Imakosi, 1985, those are the foremost cultural institutions that have carried the heartbeat of Bulawayo in as far as cultural expression is concerned. So it's a sector that is alive, but it is struggling like all other sectors. Very few are able to make decent incomes out of the arts exclusively. If you do the arts alone and there's nothing by the side, the going gets tough, and it's even worse, particularly so in this context. So, what is it that we have sought to do, I have sought to do since joining the gallery in Bulawayo? One major reason that motivated me to join a public institution, I had a burning in me as a cultural scholar. That's my background. I'm a Chevening scholar. Did a master's in culture, policy and management at City University of London, courtesy of the UK government. Then 2016 I did the Mandela Washington Fellowship. So that's my leadership and academic background in brief. So there was a burning desire in me to say, for the arts to get to the next level, public institutions must set the agenda. So looking at the gallery, when the position of the regional director became vacant, it was a challenge to me to say, why not explore this path and demonstrate in practice that which I have been preaching as a civil society activist working at Amagugu. There are things that NGOs can do, but you only get to a certain level because you are not government. You can go as far as advocacy. But if you're in a public space, in a public office, you have the constitutional mandate, the legislative mandate, you have the authority to act on certain ideas that you have. So for me, that was the biggest attraction to say we now have that leverage to demonstrate that the arts can indeed be vibrant. And I'm happy that over the last 6-7 months, we have demonstrated that with a modicum of success, certainly. We have introduced programming that has predominantly attracted young people in the city. Of note is the Friday late events, where every last Friday of the month we open up the gallery for free entry. People just walk in, they see all the exhibitions. We then integrate other art forms such as music and dance, so that we build that spirit of a cultural hub. When people visit Bulawayo, what is that one space that they envy to go to so that they get the pulse of the city? The desire is to position the gallery as that particular space. And many other arts institutions, even NGOs, have been coming to use the gallery as a space And just recently, we collaborated with WILD, Women's Institute for Leadership Development, for the 16 days of activism against GBV, where we introduced what we call public art interaction. They would do their regular public meetings, and as the arts people would go there with their papers, oils, pencils, and then get members of the community to draw their emotions, their expressions, their feelings, their thoughts. And we have an exhibition that is currently running, which is a product of that partnership. So that is the positioning of the gallery that we're trying to advance, so that we are of service to the greater community beyond the visual arts. So, at a more macroeconomic level, I mentioned earlier on that, Bulawayo tends to have this sense of exceptionalism, where we go around claiming that we're the cultural hub of Zimbabwe. But I attend a lot of events. The audiences are generally like this, half full. And the number of arts events, they are few and far apart. The quality of those exhibitions, of those productions, can be challenged. So if we are to be honest and prepare in practical terms for a Bulawayo that is truly a cultural hub, we have to accept that at the moment we may not necessarily be the leading city in terms of producing quality productions in appropriate quantities and attracting audiences in optimum numbers. That is not happening. That is the reality. But historically, we know we have done well. But the obtaining situation for now is that that is not the case. But be that as it may, what ought to be done? I'm a strong proponent for what we call creative cities. For those who have been fortunate to travel the world, you will appreciate that other cities talk to you. Everywhere you go, there is some performance happening in a public space. You don't have to go far. Johannesburg on its own, there are murals are paintings in public spaces. The city has a soul, it speaks to you. But Bulawayo is a mute city. For instance, we claim to be the city of kings. But if you visit, what is it that is apparent, that shows you who those kings were? When did they rule? So ideally it's nice to have a statue of King's legacy, maybe followed by King Lope Mula, then end with Joshua Nkomo, the nationalist. Before Joshua, there were these kings. Who were these kings? Many of us in the city and visitors are clueless about that. So that is what I'm talking about. Let the city talk to you. Let's have open public performances, conversations happening in public spaces, so that that which we claim as a cultural hub really gets practical meaning, which for now I think is significantly lacking. Then that is the first point: creative cities, public art expression, so that this city speaks to us. It is a lively city that doesn't go to sleep at 2 p.m. on Saturday. It must show that there is life happening. Number two, we need to reclaim our art spaces. We used to have various art spaces, film spaces that have been taken over by churches. I don't hate churches. There's freedom of religion. But at inception, those spaces were spaces for the arts. So we need to reclaim them. But reclaiming, of course, is not enough. Is there content to showcase in those reclaimed spaces? So it's a matrix that has to be addressed, but we need those spaces for cultural expression. You spoke about branding of Bulawayo, and that's my third issue, to say if we are to brand ourselves in terms of that which we consider to be our competitive advantage, art, culture and heritage certainly are those elements that we need to leverage as a city, the cultural hub, the cultural capital of Zimbabwe. But a verbatim declaration is not enough. I've already hammered on the point that we need to give practical meaning to what we're talking about. And for that to happen, the city of Bulawayo has to play an active role, which is my fourth intervention. The city needs to adopt a cultural policy. Globally, all the spaces that thrive in terms of the arts, their local authorities play an active role in facilitating the participation of citizens in the cultural life of their cities. positioning the gallery as the primary institution that inspires hope in terms of the value of the arts in Bulawayo, branding the city as a cultural capital of Zimbabwe, promoting the ethos of a creative city, a city that has a soul that talks to its citizens and visitors, and the need for the local authority and the government to invest financially and infrastructurally so that we have facilities for art expression, and also to invest more in terms of audience development. We don't want high quality productions that are not being consumed by the locals. So there is hope, there is potential. All we need is to work even harder, but I'm happy that institutionally as the gallery we have started on that journey, and we can only hope to elevate the conversation. We have elevated the conversation to the executive level, just to make them understand that it's not just about dreadlocks, about smoking weed. We can be intellectual as well. You know, they think art, you know, is for thunderheads. But we are slowly but surely trying to prove them otherwise.
And I'm with a voluntary organization called Do It For The Kids. Vocationally, I'm actually an auditor, so I'm actually training to be a CA, but my heart is in volunteerism and doing what I can for the betterment of Bulawayo as a whole and the city and the country as a nation. And I have the privilege to speak on civil society organizations as well as philanthropic work, or philanthropy as we may know it. And I thought what might be useful, given these terms that we might see often thrown around, is actually to maybe define them and maybe work out from that definition to say, what is the difference between a civil society organization, which we'll just call CSOs from henceforth, and the difference between that and philanthropic work. So allow me to give you some definitions that I looked up. And CSOs, it says, are non-state, not-for-profit, voluntary entities formed by people in the social sphere that are separate from the state and the market. CSOs represent a wide range of interests and ties. They can include community-based organizations, which some will call CBOs, as well as non-governmental organizations, which obviously we know as NGOs. So already we're seeing there's a distinction within CSOs themselves. Then philanthropy, it says, the purpose of philanthropy is to improve the well-being of humankind by preventing and solving social problems. It says philanthropy is not the same as charity. That actually surprised me. It says charity focuses on eliminating the suffering caused by social problems, while philanthropy focuses on eliminating social problems. So maybe a way you could remember that, I know in Zimbabwe we've really become fans of the give a man a fish a day, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him for a lifetime. So you could say that giving a man a fish is charity, and teaching him to fish is actually philanthropy. And that's how you can try and remember that distinction between the two things. Now, these two aspects of CSOs and philanthropic work don't occur in a vacuum. They occur here in a specific context. What they look like in Zimbabwe is very different to what they look like even in South Africa or in the United States. I remember being surprised to think that how can places like the United States have NGOs? I mean, everyone seems to be doing all right there. But then you realize it's because of the different problems they have socially that they're trying to address. And when you look at our situation right now in Zimbabwe, it has been a very tough year in 2019. You think of the fact that we had cyclone, I don't know how you want to pronounce it, there's Idai, there's Idai, there's all sorts. So I'll just go with cyclone Idai. And you know, you had that kind of catastrophe in Chimanimani. But even more recently and currently, the UN is estimating that 50% of Zimbabweans as of now are going to be food insecure, and you go to other sources such as Al Jazeera who push that estimation towards a number of 60%. And you consider that of 14 million people in this country, that means over 7 million Zimbabweans are food insecure, right? And it means that we have a really big problem in Zimbabwe, and probably the resulting of all the mushrooming of charity organizations that we see left, right, and center. But because it's such a broad topic, I'm going to try and narrow it down into 3 questions. And the first one is going to be the gap, and secondly, the impact of young people in Bulawayo specifically, and what we can do come 2020 to try and foster more practical and tangible solutions for the betterment of the community. And the gap, I think here, Mantate picked on me, so I think now I can reciprocate the favor and pick back on him. But you know how he was mentioning that aspect of looking at different things in terms of a business. And so now I mentioned that distinction between charity and philanthropy. And when you now look at the philanthropic side of things, there's definitely a gap there, whereby we should be actually seeing entrepreneurship coming into fruition in Bulawayo as a means of actually solving some of these problems. Of course, you can't always have a situation where you address a problem by starting a business. Some people have immediate needs where people are going to bed hungry and they need to be fed there and then, and you can't start saying to them, well, if you had a business, the person is hungry, they don't care about a business at that point. But it's really a case of saying, how are we merging these two things? Are we just fundraising and saying, we as Do It For The Kids are trying to find cooking oil and mini meal, and that's all we do for the course of a year? Or are we doing that to solve the problem temporarily, but in light of a bigger picture, the philanthropic aspect of things? And so that's where I see the gap, and probably where we then tether with Brother Nhlanhla here and saying, how then do we as young people start to create those solutions for young people, for other people, for those less privileged than ourselves, to actually start realizing that, all right, there's no one coming to save us, it's us and it's now, and this is what we have to do to realize a solution. And in terms of the impact of young people in Bulawayo, I mentioned how difficult times have been, and it's not just been in terms of people suffering, but even economically. There are many challenges in the country, and businesses aren't as generous as they traditionally have been or would like to be themselves. And so us at the organization I volunteer with, which we as Do It For The Kids, we say to ourselves, so do we stop operating because we're not big enough to be donor funded, there's no one who works full time, everyone works on a voluntary cease. But we say, do we now cease to exist because we don't have money? And we realize that's where this aspect of volunteerism comes through. And before Do It For The Kids, I remember trying to always work out, how can I, as a young person in Bulawayo, who's passionate about my city, who's passionate about people, who's passionate about change, go out there and make a difference? And of course, I went to Google first. And when I get onto Google, I'm seeing these programs for tourists and foreigners who are supposed to pay $5,000 to come and serve the community. I'm thinking, what? And that's where we as Diptychs have tried to now open up the space to young people to say, I know for a fact that even in this room right now, there are some people who have had a weekend where they said, I want to help out somewhere this weekend, or I'm free during this time and I'd love to make a difference somewhere, but you don't know where to begin. Do you have to now start going to make a relationship with an organization you've never met before? What do you do? And so that's what we've tried to do this year, is trying to open up the space to say, you know what, we don't always need money to make an impact, right? There's opportunities whereby by you actually volunteering of your services, volunteering your specialty or your skills, you're actually saving different institutions money, and that money can then be directed towards those more tangible things like buying mini meal and soya chunks and whatever it is that they need. But we're not alone. You look across the spectrum here in Bulawayo, there are many young people doing amazing things, and some of them we don't even know what it is they're doing. But that's probably where now we need to work going into 2020 and ahead to say, how do we synergize? How do we make 2 + 2 = 5? How do I realize that Nhlanhla is doing this in this community, I'm doing this there? How can we work together to do more, to be better, to make a greater and a larger, more meaningful impact? And one way we've started to look into that as Diptych is realizing that we can actually work with others. You know, Nhlanhla mentioned that we're big on cleanups, right? And it's not that we love cleaning up, it's because we love the city and we want to see it remain the beautiful city that it is, and we need to impart that knowledge even into young children to say, this is how you remain responsible and this is how we can make Bulawayo a better place. But we've now had synergies with, I think you may know a gentleman called Trigarai Shoko and his brothers. We've got Tinashe here, who's one of the brothers, and they've had the movement Keep Bulawayo Clean, which has now been going on for over 1,000 days. And we said, you know what, we would like to tap into that. We didn't feel a need for us to now go independently and say, well, we're starting our own cleanup movement. We're cleaning up the same city. And so there's a case of now saying, how do we work together? And as a result of that, we now clean up every Sunday of the week. So every Sunday, City Hall, 3 p.m., that's a hint, see you there. But apart from that, we clean up every Sunday, and I think it's now been over a year that we've been doing that as faithfully as we can. And we've also now partnered with Feed the City. And Feed the City has the ability to have been able to tap into various networks, and we feed the high density areas, especially children and older people who are struggling to make ends meet, because some people are going to bed without meals. But then we bring the volunteer base to say, when there's a 100 kg bag of chunks that arrives, how do we actually get that to distribution, and then we're bringing volunteers into that space, making people aware of the problem and how they can get involved. And that's a synopsis of what I see the situation to be currently, and what I think it's going to take for us to not just go forward, but go forward with purpose, go forward with a mission to say, what is it that we're actually trying to achieve, and how do we better work together to realize that goal.
Yeah, thank you. Nasha, to talk to us about where the politics come in.
Well, good day, good evening. My name is Mantate Mlotshwa. My presence here is very much unlikely. I come from a party that a lot of us here have grown to dislike, and I appreciate that. I come from the Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front, not the original one, but ZANU-PF. And I am a member of the Youth League. I'm the former Secretary General of the Youth League in Bulawayo Province. I am also an alumnus of a number of youth leadership training programs, included FES, PIPA, SARIF, and a number of those. I've been asked to come here to speak on youth and politics. And you know, what makes this whole thing more exciting is the fact that how I came to be a panelist here. It was supposed to be an election of sorts, you know. It was supposed to be on Twitter, a poll on Twitter, and votes thrown around, and people voting. And initially, I had no interest in that, by the way. But then someone from my own side of the organization then says, look, your name is there and you seem to be trailing. We need to fix this. And surely we fixed it. And I happened to then become the panelist here. But it then drives back to the problems we faced in 2019, vis-a-vis what we then want to look into even as we go into 2020. The contestation is too much. There's so much toxicity, you know, I don't know the word, but there's so much toxic politics in Zimbabwe. For me to be seated here with Hosi, Nhlanhla, and Terence, I had to dislodge an equally able or even more able, capable, decent Bajila, who was supposed to be seated here, or His Worship, the Mayor of the city of Bulawayo, Solomon Mgoni, who was supposed to have contested with me at that time. So it then comes back to the question of why they not include all of them there, so that they can come and then give their perspective on what they want or what they've seen in terms of 2018 as we draw into 2019 as a new year. So it's interesting because this is the reality of our politics in Zimbabwe, where we have first past the post. The one who arrives first is the one then who speaks, or is the one who then represents everyone else. The voices of the minority, the voices of the small groupings are then not heard because we always have one winner. Then it becomes a problem. I would not taking anything away from the whole organization, the logistical preparations for this, but I would have loved, even if I had not been able to become the panelist here, to then also be included there, probably as a smaller voice, so that my voice also is heard. That is the nature of our politics in Zimbabwe. 2019, as we have seen it, and I'm happy these brothers of mine, you know, we follow each other on social media, albeit we don't know each other. You know, I follow Nhlanhla, and you know, and I follow Hosi. I know he hosted the president a few days ago. It's a few weeks ago, and I was happy. I know you are passionate about creating an innovative city and all those things. And if you look at the comments that we then come that we make onto those things, we come with negative comments. Why is he talking about an innovative city? You know, you know, you just come there and you start throwing all those toxic things into whatever he's trying to drive it, but at the expense of the real politic of Bulawayo and our nation. So this conversation, in my view, when Mantate sent the email, my view and the way I then started thinking about it was the issue of saying, how do we localize our national politics, number one, and number two, how do we then nationalize our local politics? Those are the two things that we think we need to start driving. Because the issue that we have in Zimbabwe, we have failed to nationalize our local politics. Our local politics, as we try to drive it, has been driven as someone tries to pursue their local position, even as Bulawayo, usually, in most cases, it's then taken, it takes a tribal turn, if you look at it. It takes a tribal turn, it takes a fundamentalist turn, and people start to misconstrue or start to get confused about what somebody is trying to raise. When Jose raises things at the National Art Gallery, instead of Munashe listening to what Jose is saying, the first position that I try to engage in is the position of saying, who does Jose support? And at the expense of what he's trying to raise, he said, as the artist, they are trying to raise the intellectual bar. And then I'll start arguing, not intellectually, but I'll argue in terms of partisan politics. And say, but because I never liked your Facebook post, by the way. Mandu iyiruda utaura kuti isitalesi sikhuluma ngani. That is the first position that we need to start interrogating as young people. We have a problem. I have a Facebook account that I run called Mnikazi Wempupu. You know, it's a very toxic environment. If I post that today is a Monday, I can assure you, for every 100 comments that come there, 97 will be saying I'm lying. 97 will be saying that's wrong. 97 will be saying that can't be, because I'm supposed to be representing a certain political party. But that is where we start raising the questions of how do we exist in this political field. Mantate said we should look into 2019. 2019 for young people, for instance, in my view, this is my view. By the way, I'm not speaking on behalf of the party, but my view is that 2019 has been a wasted year for young people, because we have been used, we have gone ahead of things, and we have run ahead of our times, trying to, fulfill the agendas of individuals. The biggest problem of our politics in Zimbabwe is the problem of politics of personalities. We inherited this from Morgan Tsvangirai and Robert Mugabe, where when someone says MDC, you would think of Morgan Tsvangirai. When someone says ZANU-PF, you would think of Robert Mugabe. Unfortunately, our politics right now has come back to that same era of saying ZANU-PF is Emerson Mnangagwa, Fair, and then MDC is Nelson Chamisa Chete, which becomes a problem for our politics, especially with regards to issues of Bulawayo. So what we need as young people is then to start asking the questions. And in my write-up here, I said we need to start asking ourselves 4 questions. And those questions should then become the driving force of what we want to achieve as young people, especially as we walk or step into 2020. The first question is the question of purpose. What is our existential purpose? Are we there to be poster people, or are we there to be purpose people? We have had a lot of times where young people are only invited into the tables or invited into the offices, especially when there are posters to be put on poles, when there are posters to be stamped on cars. That's when young people are required to come closer. That is a problem across the political divide. It's not a problem of the MDC, it's not a problem of ZANU-PF, but it's a problem in all political parties that we have seen. We see that young people are not considered when there is ukudla. Politics in Zimbabwe, politics is something. When there is something to eat, young people are not considered. That becomes a problem. We have somebody spoke on the art side, somebody who spoke on the business side, and he was talking about the CSOs. It becomes a problem because when young people are raising their voice, we tend to then change that and start asking, who is behind you? Who sent you? Who's there anyway? When someone is organizing something good, the first question, instead of asking, how best can I support you, is, support. I know my brother here, Michael Ndiweni and Decent Bajila, they've been pursuing a very critical issue about nursing employment, nursing applications and all that. A lot of people have been seeing that. And I was talking to Bajila the other day about it, saying, I have raised a lot of feathers within the context of my own organization when I was saying, what these guys are doing needs to be supported. Why? Because people then say, you can't support that because he is MTC. You can't support that because he is CSO. You can't support that because he's from the arts sector. It becomes a problem because what they are raising is not political. What they are raising is a regional issue that is affecting the region of which we all come from. And that should then start raising even every emotion of every young person to make sure that every person who comes or hails from this region should benefit from whatever politics is obtaining in the country. It becomes a problem. So the first question I said is the question of purpose. What is the purpose of young people in terms of our local politics? What is the purpose of young people in terms of how they want to be involved? Whenever let's say a parliamentary portfolio committee comes to City Hall to come and inquire on some things, you find very few culprits. I know Ndiweni will be there. Very few culprits will be there just to sit there and question things. Where are the other young people? What is driving them away from the conversations that affect them in their day-to-day lives? Only young people are required when it's 2023, when it's 2030, when it's 2028. When it's election time, we then say, come, put on the t-shirts, put on the posters, and go around. So the second question that we also want to ask around now is the question of priorities. What are the priorities of the young people as we go into 2020? 2020 is an interesting year. Interesting because right now our politics, I will not shy away from the realities of our politics. We have two hardline stances. We have an hardline stance from the ZANU-PF party, which is saying, you need to understand that you lost elections, and you need to come and discuss with us on the position that you lost the election. And we have Party B, MDC Alliance, which is saying, no, you should agree that you lost the elections, but then you rigged your way into power, and then you're governing on a rigging mandate. Those are hardline stances that are very good for politics and academic study. But what about the young people? What is the young person saying? Mantate, when she was talking, when she was introducing me earlier on, she says we disagree on a number of things. We disagree because we are young people. Obviously, she has her own thinking. I have my own thinking. We never agree on anything, But the thing that we should agree on is the fact that we are young people. And being young is not a permanent thing. We are not going to be young forever. After 10, 15 years, some of us will be unyoung. You see, obviously, young has to be there in the sentence. We have 55-year-old young people, So some of us will be unyoung after 15 years. I'm 29. I'm only left with 6 years to be called a youth in terms of how youths are structured and all that. But I can also refuse to be called unyoung when I'm 47, 48. But the question that comes now is, what are the priorities of the young people? The ones that we call the 18s to the 35s. Because a lot of young people, I'm happy because we're seeing young people here that we have followed much, that are now speaking on issues and sectoral issues in the country at a young and tender age. But the problem is, after 5-10 years, the context will change. Nhlanhla will no longer be young. You will be unyoung. And his views and priorities, like I said, the question of priorities, would probably change. You will not be pursuing the issue of young people because he is now changed, he's different, he's pursuing another thing. Some in our political side, we say when you are young, you have to be a communist because you want everyone to share everything that's there. When you are older, you have to be a capitalist so that you get more and more as other people get less and less. But that is the effect of our priorities. And the last thing that we want to, I want to throw in there is the question of passion. What drives our passion? Is our passion driven by the person, or is our passion driven by the purpose? I would say this as a member of a particular party, but the parties that are existing right now, that are making noise right now, in my view, they don't present that which young people should be attracted to. Because the parties that we have right now present personality politics. The parties that we have today present Terence as the leader, Terence as the alpha, Terence as the omega, Terence as the Turing, or Terence as the in-between. He is everything. And then we have to follow whatever he's saying. So when Terence says no, it has to be no for everyone. That is the reality of our politics. But my view is that as we step into 2018, 2020, two things we need to take into mind. The first thing is that we will not be young forever. We are only going to be young for the next few years until we get to 35. Circumstances will change. I'm a father to a daughter, and after a few years, right now my interest for my daughter, there are very few. She loves her balloons and yogurts and all that. In 10 years' time, she won't be pursuing balloons and those. She will be pursuing different things that will be challenging to me. That is the question that each and every one of us should start trying to interrogate and try to accept. The question that we will always be young to an extent, but not forever. The second thing that we also need to remember is that politics as it can be toxic, politics as it can be, politics of fight, first past the post, who has more wins all, or winner takes all, is not sustainable. The young people of Zimbabwe, right now we are talking about issues of dialogue. People were saying Mbeki in Zimbabwe, and we saw a different number of headlines, people saying all sorts of things. Why don't we have headlines that are rising from what young people are saying? Why don't we have Obesi Tole from MDC and Nhlanhla from his independent party and Louis Matutu from ZANU-PF coming together on a press conference declaring that young people have had enough and they are saying enough is enough? We can't have these toxic politics of the old people who are so caught up with power, who are so caught up with the issue of flamboyancy in power and governance at the expense of the realities of the young. The generation that we are living in is a generation that is almost lost. Right now, most of us are almost 30, 20, 29, 30, 31, and we have lost a whole decade because of the toxic politics in our country. So my intervention, or what I want to throw in there is that young people, as we are, let's come together, let's come and bring ideas together. I'm happy with this Bulawayo leaders forum that Mantate has presented to us. It's quite important. It is the first step towards what we want to get. I'm hopeful that today, as we discuss whatever we're discussing, we're going to come up with something that we can then present to the powers that be, that the young people, especially of Bulawayo, have refused this politics of toxic politics. When Nhlanhla raises something, the first thing that I have to raise is not tribal politics, is what is he raising? What is the content of what he's raising? Because we have had a lot of toxic tribal politics in Bulawayo, especially Bulawayo, because you can't have someone say something, then people would start saying, you are a regionalist, you are a secessionist, why are you presenting that particular position? It means you are trying to create your own country, you are trying to mtwagazize the country. That's not what we are here to do. We are here to reflect on what we have seen in 2019, so that as we step into 2020, we step with a different age, we step with a different step, and then we achieve what we have to achieve. I thank you.